Good evening and welcome to the next installment of our TGI webinar series entitled Getting Help for Yourself or for a Friend. We're joined tonight by John Macphee from the JED Foundation. I'm Patrick Stiff. I'll be moderating the webinar tonight, and just as a quick heads up, this will be recorded and will be available on our YouTube site later tonight. If you have a question during the presentation, feel free to chat or submit your question in the Q&A pod. Without any further ado, I'd like to turn the floor over to John. John, it's all yours.
Thank you, Patrick. So before I kick off, just a question, if I could, Patrick. So are the folks that are participating tonight going to be giving this presentation as facilitators in the future?
Correct.
That's correct. Okay, so I just want to just confirm that context before I start, because I'll probably make some specific comments with that in mind. Hi everybody, my name is John Macphee with the JED Foundation. We're a nonprofit organization. We're located in New York, and our focus is on promoting emotional health among college and university students. And we are thrilled and honored to be in this partnership with Sigma Alpha Epsilon, and really just so grateful, really, that you take this as seriously as you do. So the purpose of this presentation is exactly what the title says. It's to talk about how to get help for yourself or a friend who may be dealing with emotional distress or mental health issues. If you have any questions as we go along, please, write them in the chat box or in the Q&A, and we'll address them as we go or at the end. Since you are facilitating these sessions, one thing to keep in mind and try to do is that if you're at a school and a campus, is to talk to the counseling center and potentially have a counselor from the counseling center with you as these discussions take place. Counseling centers at schools overwhelmingly have just terrific people, and you should get to know the folks if you don't already at your school. So with that, let's jump in, and the first thing we're going to do is watch a video.
College can be overwhelming between classes, projects, deadlines, clubs, sports, internships, jobs, and everything else. There's often too much to juggle. What's worse, there's a perception that as a college student, you're supposed to be able to balance all of these things on your own.
We spent a lot to get you there, and I know you won't let us down. Love you. Bye.
We're here to tell you that's not true, and if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're not alone.
I was really nervous about entering college. Wow. This is my next chapter of my life.
I felt so lonely and isolated and empty.
Whether you need help handling everyday stresses or something bigger like depression or an eating disorder, there are ways to feel better.
Okay, and so that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, the ways that someone can feel better and get help. And so as we kick off this discussion, we're going to start with some overriding rules, if you will. And the first is that you don't need to know exactly what's wrong. If your instincts are telling you that maybe you have a problem or a friend has a problem, trust those instincts. They're most likely right. And if a friend is trying to tell you that they're worried about you, listen to them, because again, this is really an instinctual thing, and as it relates to asking for help or seeking help, it's really a smart thing to do. It's a courageous thing to do, and so let's keep that in mind as we go forward in the presentation. So we're all human. right? And that means that we all have problems. Everybody has problems. It's part of our human condition. And as we work through the problems and the challenges that we're faced with, um, often we can do that ourselves. Sometimes we need help from friends or family. And in dealing with problems and challenges actually helps us grow. It gives us the opportunity to mature and to learn as we're doing it. And it's just an inevitable part of life. But there are times when a problem does require an outreach and seeking for help. And that's when the problem is more severe than usual or intense. It lasts a long time, or it continually gets worse, or it repeats itself. And as we're facing these situations, and then the usual ways that perhaps we cope with them are not working, and if certainly there's a need to reach out for help, if there's any thought or impulse about harming oneself or someone else. As you're giving this presentation, this is a great place to give the analogy of when you're sick or when you have an injury. So let's think about a back injury, right? If you pull out your back, you've got this physical injury and you're going to work it through. You're going to maybe take some Advil, you're going to ice it, you're going to rest, and you're going to try to work it through yourself. But if that pain lasts a long time, it keeps getting worse, you're going to know that something's wrong, and you're going to go to the doctor, right? And when you're going to tell somebody too, you're going to go, hey, my throat, my back, I need some help. And you're not going to feel any shame in that, and you're readily going to seek the help that you need. And that's an important analogy for us to think about as we're doing this, because if in fact you're having an issue with mental or emotional health, the brain is part of the body, just like your back, and there will be times where the right thing to do is to reach out and seek help in order to get better. So in this presentation, the way we've grouped issues around emotional and mental health are into these categories. Problems in feeling, how you feel, how you think, or how you're behaving. And these are not necessarily exclusive, but it's a good way of organizing information to think about and to remember what you can look for when you may be concerned about a friend. So starting with problems and feelings, the first area is anxiety. We're going to talk in a moment more deeply about anxiety, but anxiety is when you feel really nervous or tense or panicky. The second area is depression, right? Feelings of being really sad or down, perhaps always tired. And the third is mania, which is a feeling of really feeling almost too good. So we're going to look into the three of these in more depth right now. And we're going to do that starting with anxiety and listening to Vinny from the Jersey Shore talk about his experience with anxiety.
Well, when I was younger, my anxiety started off with anxiety attacks. So I would have panic attacks from a young age, especially in high school. That's when I really started having really bad panic attacks. Out of nowhere, there's nothing really to pinpoint it sometimes when it happens. It could be all in your subconscious. When my anxiety that I've been going through my whole life starts to interfere with my job, my school, or things that I do in my everyday life, then it starts to become a problem. One of your resources is actually to remove yourself from the situation at hand. And I was on the Jersey Shore. It's a terrible environment for me to be in when I'm anxious, because there's drinking involved, there's fighting involved, there's lack of sleep, lack of privacy, and it's just not a good place for me. So I was like, you know what, in order for me to get better and to do this, I had to go home and recharge my batteries.
Okay. So we had a little moment of a glitch there, but it was just about done. So I think we're okay. going from here. So Vinny, when he experienced his anxiety and he was aware that he was struggling, he removed himself from the situation and the environment. And in doing so, that was an action that he took to feel better. And he also mentioned there when we, at least on my computer, I don't know if you all experienced the same thing, I lost the video at the end there for a moment, he went home. And so in essence, he was seeking help from his family, and he went home and he recharged his batteries. Now let's go a little bit deeper into anxiety. So anxiety, and we've all felt periods of being anxious. So anxiety is that in a very intense way, feeling tense, nervous, frightened. And especially if there's nothing specific that you should be afraid of, and yet you have that feeling, right? Our ability as people to be afraid is a good thing. It protects us in so many situations. But sometimes that can happen when it shouldn't. This can be called stress, and it can also manifest itself as sort of a constant worrying or brooding. It can affect your sleep, your concentration, your ability to sit still, and in some cases it can present as a panic attack, which is very intense. Discrete period of anxiety. People describe it almost as feeling like they can't breathe, and panic attacks are sometimes mistaken as heart attacks. So now we're going to go into depression.
Some people think that it's just you're just sad, you know, suck it up, you're just sad. Well, it's being sad, yes, but it's a consistent sad, and it's not finding joy in things that you should. Just, you know, the basic everyday, you know, things that you should enjoy in everyday life. There'll be points where, you know, your hygiene is not what it should be or what you would like it to be or what it used to be. So, you know, I wouldn't shave. I kind of would just eat junk food all the time and lay around and watch TV and, you know, not really be productive and think of a plan of how to get out of it. It was just kind of, I was stagnant in that for, you know, a couple of months, I would say.
So that was a really good description of depression. You know, he talked about not finding joy in things that used to be enjoyable, changes in hygiene, you know, not really caring, and being in this situation, you know, for a period of time, for a couple of months. So that was a very good description of a depressive episode. Going a little deeper into depression. So depression is manifested by feelings of sadness or being down most of the time for an extended period of time. Changes in sleeping or eating. It can either be too much sleep or too little sleep, and the same with eating. And in your energy level, it can be revved up into sort of a tension or really slowed down. And depression can seriously affect somebody's ability to concentrate. As said in the video, lack of interest in things that used to be enjoyable is a signature symptom of depression, and withdrawing and not participating in social activities as well. Often in depression there are physical complaints, so your general aches and pains often accompany depression. We talked about poor self-care. And very importantly in men, often depression manifests itself as irritability or you know, a very quick trigger to anger. And so that is a something to really watch out for as a symptom in men. And in severe cases, people can feel worthless, even guilty, and perhaps that life is not worth living. It can also result in thoughts about harming yourself or others, and we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. So now to mania. Mania is important to talk about. You know, we often talk about people being bipolar or bipolar depression. And mania is the other side of the depression in bipolar depression, where an individual will go through episodes of mania and episodes of depression. And the mania is the upside of that bipolar depression. It's much less common than anxiety and depression, but it certainly does happen. And in the manic state, people will often feel very revved up. They can even feel great, like they have very, very high energy. And it's often that people in this state are not aware that they have a problem. And in a manic episode, individuals can show very poor judgment. They can be very impulsive, often sexually impulsive and promiscuous, spending a lot of money going on big shopping sprees, or other risk-taking behaviors. It's important to recognize these signs because, sometimes when someone's in a manic state, it can seem funny. Maybe you just think that the individual, it's part of their personality, but in fact it can be quite dangerous. So important to know and to recognize the signs. Before I continue, I wanted to point out that there are notes that go along with the presentation. So as facilitators, you should familiarize yourself with the notes that go along with the slides as well. And you'll see, if you do, that I am referencing some of the points in the presentation as I do that. Now, the bottom line here is with regard to issues of problematic issues related to feelings, are that if there's any issue related to these feelings of anxiety, depression, or mania that are strong, that are intense, or last for a while, you should reach out for help. And if you're concerned about a friend, you should help that friend reach out for help. Later in this presentation, we're going to talk very specifically about how to help a friend if you're worried about them. Now, we're going to talk now about problems in thinking, and psychosis is that. So psychosis is something that happens in the context of a major psychiatric illness. It can happen in bipolar depression. It can happen also in schizophrenia. And there are two types of psychosis. One is a hallucination. So a hallucination is when you have an experience, a sensory experience. You see something, you hear something, but it's not real. So for example, if someone is hearing voices but no one is speaking to them, they are having a hallucination. A delusion is a situation where somebody holds a very strong belief, but it's not in the realm of reason. So if somebody thinks the FBI is reading their thoughts, as an example, that would be a delusion. People that have psychosis, they can, not all the time, but they can be very disorganized in their speech. It doesn't make sense what they're saying and their behavior, and often you'll see very poor self-care in terms of their hygiene. This is relatively rare, but it requires professional treatment in essentially all cases, or almost all cases. So the bottom line here, as it relates to thinking, is that if somebody has thinking that's severely disturbed and they're disconnected from reality, it's important to get professional help as soon as possible. And we'll talk about this later, but very important to get professional help. So the third category that we talked about feelings and thinking. The third category is behavior. And we're going to talk about three different types of behaviors where problems can present. The first is obsessive impulsive behaviors, like you probably have heard the term OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. The second is substance abuse, and then self-harm. So obsessive compulsive behavior is when you have an urge to do something and you don't really want to be doing it, but you feel like you need to. And some classic examples are excessive hand washing, just repeatedly washing one's hands, or triple, quadruple checking, door locks, electrical outlets, following specific patterns that you just need to follow, or the anxiety of not doing it would just be overwhelming. This behavior, compulsive behavior, can also relate to eating, and eating too much, and even perhaps self-harm behaviors like burning or cutting. In the notes section, you'll see the note that mild obsessive compulsive behaviors are pretty frequent and usually don't require treatment. What we're talking about here in terms of really being problematic are serious impulsive and compulsive behaviors that are really impacting somebody's life. Now, substance abuse is an important area. Surveys show that about 30% of college students will report that substances, alcohol or drugs, are interfering with their school functioning, so having an impact on their ability to perform well at school. Alcohol and marijuana are the most frequent substances abused, but also prescription medications such as stimulants like Ritalin and Adderall are becoming misused more commonly. Talking a little bit deeper now about prescription drugs and medications like Adderall and Ritalin. These are medications that are used by doctors with a prescription to treat attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or attention deficit disorder. And these are medications that that bring clear benefit to people with ADHD, although they also have side effects. They're generally safe and effective when used as prescribed by somebody with ADHD. But they are misused, and they are often misused by people who believe that they can enhance their academic performance. Although the reality actually is, and this has been well studied, is that students who use these medications without a prescription to try to improve their academic performance actually have lower GPAs and perform less well than students who don't use them. Also, surveys of college students have shown that many college students are not aware that if you take a prescription drug but you don't have the prescription for yourself, that's actually illegal. Or if you give somebody a prescription that was written for you and you give it to somebody else, that's also illegal. And it's important that that people do realize that. When these drugs are misused, they can cause anxiety, they can cause panic, psychosis, which we've talked about, and for some people, heart problems. If they're misused regularly, they can result in a severe depression and even a number of what are called withdrawal symptoms and effects when somebody tries to stop them. Another category of drugs, narcotics, these are painkillers like Vicodin and Oxycontin, can be very seriously addicting and can be very dangerous and can result in overdose deaths. So let's go now to another video.
Hey man, what you doing out here? All those ladies inside.
Just getting some fresh air.
Yeah? Looks like you got your own thing going on here. Hey, let's go back into the party, huh?
Nah, just grab me another beer.
You know, you missed the history final today.
So I overslept. Whatever.
Look, I know you got problems right now.
Dude, I don't want to talk about it.
I get it, okay? I did the same thing. You're drinking to drown your problems. And drinking to drown your drinking problems. Seriously, man, I get it, you know?
So that video takes us into alcohol, but it also shows a great example of how you can support a friend and how you can be a friend, and you know, how it can be done by just really simply pointing out that you notice the change in the behavior, you're concerned about it, and you know, that can have a tremendous impact. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. And talk a little bit about alcohol misuse. So alcohol misuse can occur in episodes, really in binges, or it can be regular chronic use of alcohol. Sometimes people are using alcohol to cover up an anxiety or depression. What's important to understand in that case is that alcohol itself is a depressant. And so it really can make things worse as opposed to helping somebody cope. Really severe binges, really severe episodes of heavy alcohol use can lead to coma and death, and they're associated with a much higher rate of accidents, fights, sexual assaults, and regular misuse is associated with poor performance at school and dropping out. So as I transition to the next slide, I just want to remind everybody that if you have a question or you want me to spend more time on any of these slides, please put them in the Q&A. Now, continuing the conversation about alcohol, it's important that we talk about alcohol in two different ways, two different contexts. One is what we just talked about, which is the misuse of alcohol by drinking too much in binges or drinking too much in a chronic way, and that's a behavior that needs to be discussed. The other is intoxication, when somebody gets intoxicated to the point that that intoxication is a threat to them. And so intoxication is another example of problems with thinking. So one can be intoxicated from alcohol, from drugs like hallucinogens like LSD or mushrooms, or from the stimulants. And any of these can disturb somebody's ability to think clearly, to perceive clearly, can affect their behavior and judgment. And obviously we all know this. Usually the situation resolves itself when the substance is gone from the body, but it doesn't for everybody. The key here is to recognize that it's a very serious situation if the intoxicated person is very agitated, if they're behaving in a threatening way to themselves or to others, or if it looks like they're losing consciousness and they appear to be passing out. And it's critical to get help if any of these things are occurring, okay? And again, I'll go back to the point that we made at the beginning. This is a situation where you need to trust your instincts. If you know in your gut that this is a bad situation, then you need to reach out for help, okay? We're going to talk about this in more detail. Important that you know that most schools today have policies around alcohol and drug use that are amnesty policies, which mean that if somebody does seek help, or they call the campus hotline, or they call for an ambulance, that there will be no or very, very limited disciplinary action because of it. And the reason is clear, right? Because it's much more important to seek help than to worry about what's going to happen if you do seek that help. So important to know that, and important to know that the most important thing here is to call for help if you're worried about yourself or a friend. So now to the subject of suicide and suicide prevention. So suicide, while it's rare in college students, it does occur, and it's important to know that it occurs in people who are depressed. That's most often the situation, is that the individual who dies by suicide overwhelmingly had a diagnosis, or a potential diagnosis, if they weren't diagnosed yet, of depression. Some factors that increase the risk and the dangers here are as if the individual has a history of suicide attempt, if they have a history of impulsive behavior, if they're expressing feelings of being trapped or hopeless, if they've withdrawn from their friends and have been isolating themselves, experiencing intense guilt, and if they have access to means for self-harm. Okay, so those are all factors that need to raise our level of concern. If a young person, a young adult, has thoughts of suicide, it's almost always suggestive of the presence of a serious problem, and that serious problem is most often depression. So it's critical that we understand that if an individual is having thoughts or impulses to harm oneself or others, it's incredibly important to get help as soon as possible. It's an emergency. And so in this situation, then the key is to call the campus hotline if there's a campus hotline, to call 911, to go into the counseling center, to go to an emergency room, or to call the Lifeline, which is a phone number we'll share with you later in this presentation, which is 1-800-273-TALK. The key message here, though, is to know that getting help is the thing to do, and to get it urgently. So now to talk more about how do you get help, right? If you're worried about yourself, or you're worried about a friend. So first is the counseling services on your college campus. You're all going to be facilitators. You should know where the counseling service is. You should know folks there. Does the counseling service, what are the counseling services hours? Do they have a 24-hour hotline? You should know where the health services are on the college campus. The chaplain, religious services can be a great resource. The dean of students, the student affairs office. There are faculty advisors, your fraternity mentors and advisors. There are a lot of people that you can go to. And the key here is, if you're worried about yourself, if you're worried about a friend, to talk to somebody you trust, and to reach out to any of these folks that we've said here. And if the situation is an emergency, to make contact with the counseling services urgently, as we said. And in a crisis, remember this number. You should put it in your smartphones, 1-800-273-TALK. That is a 24-hour national hotline, 7 days a week, that's always staffed by counselors who can help you really with any situation. And also, we suggest that the phone numbers on the campus for campus security, for campus counseling services, are also something that people put into their smartphones, so that they have available at all times. So now let's talk about your friend, and how do you know if your friend is in trouble, okay? And what's really important here are our listening skills, and then we'll talk some more about how to help as a friend. So let's go to another video.
Hey, it's me. I'm stopping by, all right? Listen, you've been saying that for a while. Let me help this time.
So that was a great example of how to be a friend. You know, she saw some signs that her friend was in emotional distress, that she was withdrawing herself and not engaging, and she reached out and was proactive and said, "Hey, you know, I'm coming over." And so when we talk about you know, how you can help, that was just a great example of what you can do. The things, the signs that you should look for or be concerned about if you see them in a friend, the easiest way and a great way to think about this, and this might be the most important slide, this and the next slide in the entire presentation, it's change is what you're looking for, right? So has there been a change in the appearance in terms of self-care in an individual? They're not shaving anymore. They're wearing the same clothes day after day. They just don't care. Eating, changes in eating, not eating, losing weight, or just eating too much, or just not caring about what they eat, always sleeping or not sleeping at all. Changes in social interactions are an important warning sign as well. And is there a change in the use of alcohol or drugs? So these are the things to keep an eye out for. And again, back to the main point. Trust your gut. Trust your gut. If you see a pattern and you're worried about it, then you need to ask your friend about it. Okay, and so when we talk about these changes, right, another point here is to remember what we said about these problems. If these changes are intense or they're lasting too long, it could indicate a problem. So when you talk to someone about these concerns, so let's assume now that we are concerned about our friend. First thing to know is that it can be incredibly helpful just talking to the person and listening. Okay, and listening with an open mind. So what you want to do is you want to say to someone, "Hey, I've noticed, I've noticed that you're sleeping more. You seem to be sleeping a lot. You seem to be eating a lot less." Or like the video we saw, "Hey, I've noticed you're drinking. You seem to be drinking by yourself a lot." That's how you can start the conversation very, very simply. It says that you care about your friend. Your friend will know that. But when having these conversations with someone, something to avoid is avoid being judgmental or dismissive about the symptoms. So, saying things like, "You'll get over it," or "You just need to suck it up," or "You just need to snap out of it." If somebody is struggling with with a mental health issue, again, it's like that serious back pain. You can't just snap out of it. You need some help. And so in these conversations, the key is to express the concern, point out the change, let the person know you're worried. Don't be judgmental, and just listen. And don't feel the need to fill in the quiet yourself. Let your friend talk. And if something doesn't make sense to you, ask them about that. And you don't need to try to solve the problem in these conversations, right? The key is to let them know that you're there, that you care, and that you want to help them connect with help, right? And so you can ask them how you can best support them. You can ask if you can help locate the counseling services for them. Can you help them make an appointment? You can potentially go with them. Another key point in these conversations is that don't be afraid to ask about suicidal thoughts. And if you're worried that your friend is thinking about harming themselves, ask them. And the way to ask them is to say, are you having thoughts about harming yourself? Are you having thoughts about hurting yourself? You will do no harm by asking that question at all, and only potentially good if you're worried about it. So we'll come back to that point. What we'll do here is listen to Vinny talk a little bit more about how to be a friend in these situations.
They really didn't have that many resources to help me when we were filming the show. The advice that I have someone dealing with anxiety or stress is to definitely get help. Just to say something to somebody, whether it's your sister, your brother, your friend, your mother, a therapist. It doesn't have to be that extreme. You have to just speak up, just so in case the problem ever does manifest and gets worse, you have already laid down the foundation and people already are aware. You're on their radar that like something's not right. If you're worried about a friend dealing with anxiety, I would definitely recommend help for your friend. Maybe the person dealing with anxiety doesn't want to go to a professional or is embarrassed to see a therapist or to open up about it. I would be a support system for that friend that's going through anxiety, be there for them, but also help them. Maybe, go through their insurance book with them and look up therapists, or say, you know what, I hear there's school counselors around that can help you, because a lot of times the anxious person or the depressed person has no drive or motivation for themselves. So the best advice I can give for someone that's a bystander is to do the work for the anxious person, just so the anxious person has to walk through the door.
So really some great advice from Vinny. He said speak up. That's a theme, right? Speak up if you're worried about yourself, you're worried about someone else. Be there as a support system, and be action-oriented. Help the person. Help the person do the homework. Help the person make the appointment. Take them to the appointment. All very, very good advice. And some other things you can do as well when you're worried about a friend is check in with them more regularly, right? Include them in your plans. Ask them how you can be supportive to them. So, and some other points here are to let when you're talking to your friend is to remind them that everyone goes through these tough times, right? It's very common. People often, for a variety of reasons, don't want to talk about it, but it's just simply a fact that we all as human beings go through emotional and mental health struggles. And it is possible to feel better, and counseling does help. And so, let your friend know that it's okay to speak up, and it's okay to get help and to ask for help. And I've said several times, trust your instincts, right? If you're worried, speak to somebody about it. And the last point on this page is if your friend is thinking about suicide, if they do tell you they're thinking about harming themselves, then that's an emergency. And you've got to let campus counseling and security know right away. So don't leave your friend. Tell your friend you're staying with them. Call the 24-hour hotline. If it's the night and the hotline on the campus isn't available, call security. Call the 1-800-273-TALK. If the counseling center is open, walk your friend to the counseling center. If it's the middle of the night, walk them to the emergency room. But treat it as an emergency. And it is a set of actions that your friend is likely to appreciate, because it's coming from caring. So know your campus's resources. You should know the counseling center. You can call the counseling center. As I just said, do not leave your friend alone if it's an emergency. You call campus security or 911. And if your friend is talking about harming themselves, you call the campus security or 911 right away. And if you're unsure what to do and you want some advice, this lifeline is a really great resource. It's 1-800-273-TALK. You can call them after you've had an exchange with your friend if you want, if it's in the middle of the night, and just to get their advice on how to handle it. Okay, and just as we close this up, just some final thoughts. These things happen, right? They happen, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to feel badly about. They happen to all of us. And as you're looking out for your friends, and as you create that culture in your fraternities, you're looking for change and changes. And when you see those changes, talk to your friend. If you know they're happening to yourself, ask for help. Okay, you're not alone. No one's alone, and help is certainly available. There are a lot of resources. They've all been made available to you on your site, so I won't go through them here in detail. But there are some great websites and resources where you can learn more about this information. And with that, we've completed the presentation. So if anybody has any questions or subjects you want me to go back over, just write it into the Q&A.
We have a question from Jerry Witter. Yes, all the resource presentation materials will be made available online. We can embed the videos for you. We can host them on YouTube. Any way that we can do to help you deliver this presentation, we will get you the material.
Great. Are there other questions? Did you find the review helpful? Okay, great. Yeah, James and Patrick are available to you. If you have any questions here at the JED Foundation, we're available to Sigma Alpha Epsilon, through this entire training and process. If there are any questions, we're available and happy to help however we can.
See a bunch of people typing, so I'll let them kind of post. Wonderful.
Okay, terrific. Okay, great.
To hear. Does anybody have any final questions before we cap it off for the night? We do have a question from Ryan, Rhode Island Alpha, and the question is, what is your advice on approaching someone you see symptoms in, but you don't necessarily know them, perhaps a sorority sister or a member of another fraternity? Do you recommend approaching them or talking to someone else first?
That's a great question. So if you see an acute situation, a potential emergency, some of the situations we talked about, a situation of intoxication or psychosis, or in some way you think the person represents a threat to themselves or others, then you should, as we talked about, contact campus security or 911 right away. If you see signs in someone, say you don't know very well, maybe someone in a class, or as you said, a sorority sister, then you can talk to them yourself if you're comfortable. If you're not, you can talk to their friends. Or I think a great thing to do in that situation is to tell the counseling center that you're worried about that student, or tell somebody in student affairs. Tell somebody in the administration that you're worried and why you're worried. And my first recommendation there would be the counseling center. And again, I think in these situations where you're worried about somebody in a situation like that, we often second guess ourselves, and we think, well, maybe we're wrong, or maybe it's not our business. Trust your instincts. If you're worried, then take an action and do something about it.
Real quick, if there's any slides or concepts you'd like some more information from John on as you moderate and facilitate these talks, feel free to throw those in the chat box, and we will go back to them and get more information. I don't entirely know off the top of my head, Jerry, but I will confer with James and get you that answer, and I'll email you either later tonight or tomorrow morning first thing. Last call for questions. All right, with that, I'd like to thank John from the JED Foundation for his time and all of your time for participating in this webinar. As we close things off, I will turn the floor over to John.
Okay. Well, I would just like to thank everybody. Thanks for your commitment to this area, and for looking to educate yourselves and your brothers on how to how to look out for a friend, and create healthier communities. So we're just so happy to see that you guys are taking this on, and we'd like to help you however we can. So hope everybody has a great night, and thanks so much.
In the chat box, and your screen will quickly load with the survey. We would like it if you could fill out a post-webinar survey. And again, thank you for your time tonight, and bye Alpha, and have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.